Okay, in Matthew 5:17, I did not come to abolish the law of Moses, but to keep it. Galatians 3:22, the law of Moses was our guardian, says Paul, until Christ died. Hebrews 10:9, Jesus did away with the first, that is the first covenant, by keeping it in order to establish the second, that is covenant, with his death. So by now you might have guessed, I hope, that's not how these verses read, because these are things the Bible never said about the work of Jesus in relation to the law of Moses, or what some call the Torah, and the new covenant. This is the way most Christians seem to understand these verses, however, because they continue to misapply, therefore misuse, words like inaugurated, established, and made when it comes to the new covenant. When exactly did Jesus inaugurate the new covenant law, thus making the old covenant law of Moses, the Torah, something no longer to be obeyed and observed? The Gospels show that Jesus began to establish, to make his new covenant law by his ministry, or more specifically, by his teachings. For example, note these so-called six antitheses in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5 between the law of Moses and the law of Jesus. In other words, note the contrasts that Jesus makes by his teaching regarding murder, lust, marriage and divorce, vows or oaths, lethal self-defense, and on the topic of the enemies. Now, if we take only the last two examples from this list, Numbers 5 and 6, we clearly see how Jesus has effectively undermined and thus overruled Torah on this point. For example, under Moses, God commanded the Israelites not to show any pity. Deuteronomy 19:21. Your rule should be life for life, eye for an eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. In Matthew 5, Jesus says, "But I tell you, do not resist an evil person." In verse 44, "But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven." I think the antithesis, the contrast is clear here between the old covenant system represented by the Torah, the law of Moses, pertaining to personal and judicial punishments, and what Jesus then says when he starts with, "But I tell you." These old covenant commandments stand overruled. The fact that this new covenant law of Jesus was inaugurated or established with his ministry and teachings, not at the cross, is shown by his very words at the Last Supper as well. Jesus said, "This is an agreement confirmed with my blood, which is poured out as a sacrifice for you." And as we know, any covenant has to be made out of words and works. So where are the words and works of this new covenant law to be found? In the teachings of Jesus, and not just at the cross. Simply put, my friends, the new covenant came into effect with the teaching of Jesus and was officially ratified, or if you will, certified at the cross. As a result, during the ministry of Jesus, he was already functioning as the high priest, the Melchizedek figure, the mediator of that new covenant law, and not the old covenant law of Moses, as Hebrew 9 makes clear. For where there is a covenant, there must of necessity be the death of the one who made it.